Live. All right, guys, welcome to the first Dear Community Live. So we are with the 24-Hour Citizen Project. You may be wondering what the 24-Hour Citizen Project is. And it's an event where we connect people in the community that have civic or community-focused ideas with expertise and financial backers to get those ideas done. This is an event created for citizens to impact their community directly through the pursuit of citizen-led projects who compete during an annual event where they pitch with hopes of get funding. So if anyone is out there that has great ideas for the community, we encourage you to apply and submit your idea. But know and be prepared to experience the ups and downs of pursuing your idea. The pressure of getting it done in just 24 hours time and the encouragement given to you by a group of 200 people that's cheering you on. Super fun. So I'm sitting here with Eric Yondo, or should I say Dr. Eric Yondo?
I guess that's my official title now.
Okay, we'll go with Dr. Yondo for the purpose of the interview. Eric, so go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I am a recent graduate of the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, where I completed my PhD in environmental and evolutionary biology in the biology department. And I have a specialty in coastal and wetland ecology. And I've been in Lafayette since 2012. I came down here from New England and have been enjoying things ever since.
Wow. Eric is also a friend. His wife, Taylor, is also a friend. They are both lead organizers of the TEDx Vermilion Street event that happens every year here.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough to have Butch on for our first year, right?
Yep, first year. First talk.
First talk.
Yeah, and they challenged me to do the concept of the what was at the time the 48-Hour Citizen Project.
And then you just shortened it right up and made it so much harder.
We got more ambitious.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're here for what we call Dear Community Live. It's actually our first Dear Community Live that we've ever done. And what this is it's an effort to document the work that you've done. So you've gotten funded at the 24-Hour Citizen Project. You've been working for the last year. And what we want to do is we want your work to continue to live on. We want other cities to look at your experience and the work that you've put in and potentially learn from it.
Sure.
And so that's why we're here. So we could ditch the entertainment value of this and just go straight down to how we got stuff done.
Sure.
Right. So that's the purpose of Dear Community Live. So let's jump right in. For the new viewers that maybe didn't look at our website or wasn't present during the 24-Hour Citizen Project last year, give us like your 30-second minute elevator pitch. What is the Rain Garden Project?
Sure. So the Acadiana Rain Gardens project, as we have become eventually known to be, basically in Lafayette, Louisiana, and many other portions in coastal and low-lying areas, as well as pretty much everywhere in the country, there's a big issue with water management. So we, in August 2016, was kind of I guess I'd say a major change for the community here, as we received 24 inches of rain, something like that, in about 48 hours. So any place that receives that much water is going to flood. And while Louisiana can handle a lot of rain, we couldn't handle that much rain. So there was large amounts of flooding, large amounts of damage, and this ended up basically providing the impetus to say, what can we do on not just the government level or the big scale level, but what can community members do? So when you have rain come down in any environment, there's few options. So it either can penetrate into the ground through water. The water can penetrate into the ground. It can run off into a nearby creek or river, or it can end up being contained either permanently or just for a little while. Essentially, a retention or a detention of the water for a little bit of time. But as you shift from a more rural setting where a lot of water can actually be absorbed into the ground, as you become more urban, like many communities as they continue to develop, you end up getting hard surfaces. And these hard surfaces can be buildings, they can be roads, they can be parking lots, basically anything, any sort of asphalt or concrete, basically where water can't go directly into the ground. So you end up with areas that used to be able to absorb a lot of water now are just pushing water off into new areas. And this is a major issue in almost all urban ecosystems now. And then when you get really heavy rains, whether it's 3 inches or 24 inches or even just an inch, you end up getting really flashy environments as well. So those hard structures, they don't slow water down. They actually allow it to speed up. It flies down into a local creek or coulee or river, and you end up with big flooding issues. So one of the things that you can do on a local level is to handle water locally, basically. So handle your water on your property, at your business, in a park, something like that. And by that, I mean, give it a place to go so it can slow down a little bit instead of flying off into a drain. Let it slow down a little bit, give it a chance to absorb, and then also give it a chance to perhaps stay there for a few hours before it goes into a local creek. And with that, basically we came up with we had read about rain gardens, which are common landscaping features throughout the country, have been used in a lot of other communities. But this area really didn't, we didn't really have any rain gardens. There was a few at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette on their campus, but it's not something familiar to the community. So rain gardens basically use a variety of changing the actual shape of the land. So typically digging some sort of ditch or providing some sort of container or catchment for the water to go, and then also planting them with plants that can handle flooded conditions. And in Louisiana, we're kind of in this interesting place where, we have both really heavy rains, but we also have periods of drought. So October, typically, it does not rain. So a lot of the plants that are actually local and native to this area are actually perfectly adapted to handle both water and drought. And that's one of the, we basically went after, and we're trying to find plants for our rain gardens that were native, that could handle all these things. And then basically all of this comes together. You have a place for the water to go. The water actually can penetrate further into the ground instead of a hard surface. So we tilled up the soil, plants go down, but then also the plants are actually taking some of the water, and they call it transpiration, but basically evaporation occurs much more quickly.
Sure. So tell me about the boundaries of your project specifically. Obviously, especially for Lafayette, this is a big issue. Sure. And it's actually a hot topic around the community too. So how many rain gardens did you set out to install? How much was that going to cost? I think you asked for somewhere over $2,000. And where does that go from here?
Yeah, so I guess depending on how you look at this, water management can be either considered a municipal issue, a government issue, or you can consider it a personal, individual, private, family, and business issue. And like I had said earlier, there's the government in town is working to try to manage water on a real big scale, but they can't do it just by themselves. And you really need to worry about water management on a small scale, and that can have a real big impact over time. So if you put in multiple water management structures, if you can put 100 into a neighborhood, that can make a really big difference to what comes out of that neighborhood. So when we were kind of developing this project, our kind of goals, we sat down, and I'm one of 4 or 5 members of this team. So we have two other wetland ecologists, Dr. Taylor Slowey, and Dr. Scott Jones now. Mm-hmm. And then we also were working with a landscape architect, John Oliver. And we basically sat down and we're trying to think of something that we could come up with that is a doable project for individual homeowners or business owners that they could either install themselves or they could pay someone, a landscaper, to do. And we also wanted to basically this be a project that is a demonstration, because an individual rain garden may have very little impact It might help an individual yard, but it's not gonna solve flooding issues for an entire town or city. But really, we wanted to get people familiar with what these are, get people comfortable with what they are, because they look a little bit different than a normal landscaping bed.
Right.
But they actually serve a function instead of just a heap of, dyed mulch and some plants that have, or little ornamental plants that have come here from some other portion of the world. And then ideally try to create some sort of a network, or try to get people to start to think about these and get excited about them.
Right. On the topic of upkeep,
Sure.
I think a lot of people may think and hear about a rain garden and think, gosh, how do we maintain this thing? Obviously, we could designate an area, we could round up a group of volunteers, but like, how does it? We know that it serves a purpose, but how do we maintain it?
Sure. So that's probably the biggest question that we get asked. Every single place we go, everybody that we talk to, the biggest question is maintenance. Who's going to take care of this? And is this going to be way more work? We all have busy lives. We don't want to spend really too much more time, having to just maintain something. So if you design these correctly, you can basically set them up, and you can put in as much maintenance or as little maintenance into them as you want. So that typical landscaping bed that you have sitting right in your front yard with the mulch and your petunias and the little Japanese maple tree, you put a certain amount of work into that. Either you pay someone to maintain it, or you go out and weed it yourself, and you might put things in there. And you can make these rain gardens, instead of just having a mound of mulch, you basically you can essentially make a shallow pit, and you can spend quite a bit of time maintaining them. Or the alternative is, if you pick the appropriate plants, you can actually make it so you're not having to replant plants every single year. Once they get established, a lot of these native plants, they're perennials. They come back year after year after year, and they can have pops of color. Here in Louisiana, we have a lot of iris species and hibiscus species that people they go bonkers over,
Right.
when they see them growing, and those are great species to have in your rain garden, and they require almost no maintenance.
Right. That's great. So take me back for a second.
Sure.
Take me back to the time where the idea actually came to mind. Like I go back to a lot of conversations like with friends about grand ideas that they've had, and they were just that. They just stayed during, at the conversation on the couch or in the car or at the bar or whatever. Where did this idea first come from? Take me back to that place.
So this had been something that I think several of our group members had thought about and had maybe even talked about. I know that we had, John Oliver, the landscape architect, he had worked in New Orleans and had actually helped put several of these in for a group that was doing that there. So he had this very interesting expertise. And Taylor Slowey and myself had thought about, a project that we could put in the ground. And it wasn't until we had Scott Jones come along. So we had actually been meeting, the three of us, Taylor, Scott, and myself, had been meeting as part of this kind of weekly science gathering that was being put on by the Institute for Coastal and Water Research at UL. And with their director's support, we started to kind of think about, well, what's something we could actually do? What's something that we could spend a little bit of time and do something? And that was right around the time when you guys were the 24-Hour Citizen Project was starting to look for applications. Mm-hmm. So we thought, we don't want this to be too big of a project, but we could feasibly come up with something. And water issues are hot right now, in both in the city but also across the country. And we said, well, we could put in a rain garden. And a rain garden, like I said earlier, is a very common thing, but is very foreign to this portion, at least of Louisiana. Right. It's not something that I think people unintentionally may build them, or we have a lot of swamps, so it's kind of a very natural fit that way. But Scott basically said, I'm going to put together a proposal, and will you guys read over it and join me? So we sat down and we kind of hashed things out, and and worked to try to get things going. And we really quickly realized that as 3 scientists, we had absolutely no design skills. And immediately, before we even got started on the project, we realized we needed a designer. We needed an architect. So we knew John. John was a friend of ours, and he was all about it. So he jumped right in, and we submitted an application to the 24-Hour Citizen Project, and just started to try to talk to people, try to keep continuing to develop the idea even once the application was in.
Right.
And then you guys started to help to develop the idea as well.
Yeah. Tell me about, so I'm glad you mentioned 24-Hour Citizen Project and the application and
Sure.
and what kind of happens leading up to the event and during the event. So can you kind of walk us through the process of like getting selected, learning the news, and then knowing that you have to pitch this project and you'll be competing for funding in just a month's time?
Yeah. So the initial interest from the 24-Hour Citizen Project that our project had been selected to pitch was super exciting, and you guys had come back to us with a few clarifying questions because I understand
That's what we do.
Understandably, and we probably had a pretty technical application. We're unfortunately not always, scientists aren't always necessarily the best communicators in the real world. So, but we needed that, and then that realization that we needed to kind of get our stuff together, and the 24-Hour Citizen Project facilitates a whole bunch of stuff, but we realized we needed to start talking to people that might be either interested or kind of experts like right away.
Yeah.
And I think you guys started to facilitate that even before the event, which was awesome.
Great. So let's talk about the pursuit of your project. Yeah. Imagine you have the ears of a group or several groups of people around the country.
Sure.
That are saying, I want to install a rain garden in my community. Where do they begin? Walk them through what the process would look like, if to the best of your knowledge, sharing your experience.
Yeah. So before the very first thing, just start. And I say that, I don't mean that in a I don't know, too simple of a way, but just taking that idea, saying that we want to do this, and just stick your toe in the pool, and you will be amazed at the number of people that are willing to help you with whatever you need. Find somebody who they don't need to be the expert on it in the area. Find somebody who's interested in it, or find somebody who is willing to sit down, and maybe it's a friend of yours that can get you connected, because everybody has that one person that knows everybody. And the 24-Hour Citizen Project essentially becomes that friend, that person that knows everybody. But just think about, what you're interested in doing, and think about groups that you might want to partner with. So that's something that we really tried to go right from the start. We tried to say, this is not something that we want to be, first of all, that we want to be the only people doing. We want other people to join in, but we also want to educate people. So we want to get as many people involved as possible. And sometimes that works out really easily, and sometimes that, it's tricky getting schedules to work together. But just, get people to start thinking about it, and guaranteed there's somebody else out there. Then after that, you can start to think about, well, where's the best place to put in something like a rain garden? And then, make a list and start to approach people. So one of our projects is at Girard Park. It's one of the city-owned parks here in Lafayette, and we just, essentially blindly emailed the parks director after being given his name, and got in touch with him, sat down, and he was all about it. He thought it was a fantastic idea. A lot of cities have constraints of what they can do, but you as an individual citizen with a little bit of time and money, they are almost always more than happy to, as long as it's fitting, as long as it's not too crazy or too dangerous or anything like that, more likely than not, they're more than happy to have groups of people come and help contribute to their community's parks, because it's not just the government that should be and can be contributing to the beauty or the functionality of these spaces.
So I heard build a team,
Yeah.
get excitement around the idea. So there are organizations in town, right? So you already talked about that this is a pilot program or a demonstration project. So we're only talking about 2 gardens here. And the goal is to install the gardens and show people how it's done, so that governments or government agencies, businesses, maybe even neighborhoods could potentially adopt this. So step number 1, build a team.
Yeah.
Step number 2, location. So identify your location. For you guys, it sounds like it was a one effort and you got an acceptance. That's probably not always the case, right?
No, and our second location, was we wanted these to be as public as possible. We had thought about trying to maybe put one into a neighborhood or something like that, and we actually approached the city hall, and with them, city hall is a big focal point, and they were very interested, but they also wanted to make sure it was in a place that was going to work for them. So we had scouted out all around City Hall's property, and there was a bunch of different areas, but they actually ended up having a location in mind that we hadn't even thought about. That ended up being a little bit different, perhaps, than what we had envisioned, but I think being really adaptive to whatever the needs of people that you're going to be working with. It actually has ended up paying off and has ended up providing a rain garden example that is different, but can also kind of show the possibility of what these have become. So we're really super happy that we ended up putting in the other rain garden. Essentially, it was in an old fountain that they didn't have the money to remove, and we wanted to essentially beautify it and give it some function and purpose.
Nice. So build a team, select a location, and I'd say that there's a third component to this, and that would be blueprints and installation, or maybe design, blueprints, installation. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, once we had kind of figured out, ideally where our gardens were going to be, this is really a time where, it was really fun for us to try to be creative and kind of dream big on what this project could be. And then, kind of work within the constraints of the site and what other people wanted as well. So, I would really encourage people, especially if they're working in a park or even in their neighborhood, or even on their own piece of property, talk to the people that are going to be impacted by this. So, we were interested in, we made up a design and showed it to the parks and to City Hall and kind of explained to them and walked through them. But, that could be your neighbor. That could be if you have a little boulevard or median, that could just be the neighborhood association or whoever it ends up being, because people want to be part of something. People want to have their 2 cents, and people have great ideas, especially your older neighbors, your people who have just been in the community for a long time. They know exactly, in this case, they know where water piles up. They know where the need is. So just taking the time to not just jump right in, but to come up with a sound design, go back to your stakeholders in this case, whoever they may be, and get their input. And whether those stakeholders are just citizens, depending on the project, or like in our case, it was citizens and government members, and then also other people from the 24-Hour Citizen Project. We wanted feedback on our great idea before we even started to install it or buy supplies or things like that.
How many days did it take you to install the garden?
So
the one in Girard Park.
The one in Girard Park went in over the course of 1 weekend. And we actually partnered with UL's big event, I believe it's called. And so we ended up getting almost 40 volunteers, maybe even more. We had members from several of the sororities and fraternities, as well as some of the other on-campus organizations that came out. And they were of great help. They wanted to know all about it. And we really needed that many hands to get the job done. So we had them for one full morning and, really made an impact. Basically, we were able to dig the entire area out. This area needed to be dug out. Soil was really hard and compact, and they put a lot of time and effort in just removing materials. But then,
How many volunteers?
almost 40 volunteers just from
40.
there.
So 40 volunteers in one morning.
Yeah, and that was purely just us giving us a call to the director of the big event and saying we're looking for volunteers. We could use anywhere between, 10 and I think 30, and we got close to 40, I'd say.
Wow.
But it was really interesting to just see people kind of getting excited about doing something in their community, and a lot of these people had never hadn't put in a rain garden before, but didn't even know that this might even be an issue.
Right.
So that's where the education comes in. And we were able to, not only educate people once they are there and the garden's complete, but getting the community involved early in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. So tell me this. Anytime we pursue any endeavor, there are the unknowns. They're the things that you didn't expect to happen.
Sure.
I'm sure in this project, given all of the qualifications of your entire team, there are still a couple of things that you didn't expect from the project.
Oh, big time.
What were they? Can you share them with us?
So, initially, way back when this project was just coming to light, we were thinking that these were going to be, we were thinking, could we fit 3 to 5 rain gardens? That was kind of our first hurdle. And pretty quickly it became evident that, due to the constraints of, time and funding and space, we really need to focus on 2 really good ones. Kind of the second challenge, which is, I guess, a physical challenge, basically our site at Girard Park, we were expecting to be able to get this entire thing done in, a morning and an afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up basically having to using those 40 volunteers I just talked about, basically dig out this area.
Right.
And the soil was so compact, and we spent hours just with a rototiller trying to break up the soil. But the park has thousands of visitors every year walking across the grass, and for the rain gardens, they really need to break up the soil and allow the plants to grow down into the soil, and they continue to break things up.
Right.
So that really was, that's kind of a real physical challenge that way. But just even just the planning and trying to get things all the way together, it just takes time more than that, more than anything.
Yeah.
So.
Tell us the things that you loved about the project.
Just getting to meet new people, to be honest with you. We've really enjoyed learning about more about these rain gardens. Despite being wetland ecologists, urban environments. Some scientists actually focus on them, but that was a kind of a new area. But getting to just meet and talk to people, during the actual 24-hour Citizen Project event, we sat down with the mayor, we sat down with some local engineers, we sat down with congressmen, we sat down with people from other parks in the town, the people from Moncus Park, who are awesome because they essentially have done this, but on a huge this huge scale. They're building an entire park right now. And then also once we were out there, talking to citizens as they passed by, or friends that we had invited to come and see what we were up to. And then also all the people that provided our supplies. We ended up using a local native grower who's based out of Amite.
I only know because I'm from the area.
But he was absolutely fantastic. He had just a wealth of knowledge on the types of plants and what we should be using, and he was willing to take the time to talk to us.
So would this project have happened if it wasn't for the 24-hour Citizen Project?
I don't think so.
No.
The funding really was something that we needed for sure, and I don't think that without the pitch event, besides Scott doing a great job pitching, I don't think a lot of people necessarily would support this sort of thing without having that sort of a platform and kind of having support drum up for it. getting the 24-hour citizen project to say this is one of the teams that we want to pitch, and having the funders to say, this is something worthwhile for the community after we tried to break it down for them and show them the value. And that was also probably a challenge, talking to a whole different type of audience, and trying to make a pitch that is going to really sell. Which can be really, is really difficult. It's a very different type of talking, I think, for most people, unless you're just on Shark Tank every week, just, getting challenged on your ideas. But really trying to pitch it to your community to get people excited about it.
And I feel like in many communities, including this one, and I'm guilty of this, we have this tendency to sit back and wait for, say, local government to do the things that we want them to do.
Sure.
I know that rain gardens have been on the radar of our local government, especially with all of the flooding and all of the things that have been going on. So why take it upon yourself to pursue this project? Why not sit back and wait?
So the local government, so there's actually Department of Environmental Quality and Project Front Yard. They're actually pursuing more rain gardens. And one of the interesting things that came out of this was, as this is something that they've been wanting to do and are pursuing actively. And I really applaud them for doing that. But I think and people have started to talk about this in general in the community, but getting that community buy-in is really important. And they're doing their portion of that and getting people excited about it. But I think, at least for us, a portion of it was just showing people that you can do this. You can go and, you can work side by side with your local government or a nonprofit in town who's doing great work, and you shouldn't just let, them always take the lead. There's a whole bunch to be said for taking a project, claiming it as your own, and now, people now know that, we were the ones that put this in, and not that we want any specific credit, but like, I'd almost rather I want people to go and see and say that, this is just a community, a citizen-based team. We might have a scientific background, but with very little, you can educate yourself on just about anything. This is something that we were passionate about. But showing your neighbors that you're passionate about something and that you're willing to donate some of your time, some of your resources to beautify a park or even your own little stretch of sidewalk or whatever it is, both from a beautification standpoint, but then also a functional standpoint, and saying that this is something that matters to us, and getting them inspired and educating them on whatever your topic is.
So what's left for the project? You guys are 100% done?
We are about 95% done.
So I know there's an educational component.
Yeah.
And I know we touched on it a little bit, but that's the only thing. So we're waiting on signage. Is that the very last thing?
Yeah. So we've been working with some graphic designers from the Lafayette Science Museum, Blake, and he's been fantastic. And he designs the science museums. All their signage and educational materials. And he's really helped us break things down, think about a really easy way to organize it. And he's also a fantastic graphic designer. So he's been helping us with that. And so we're working on finalizing those. We're almost done. And then we're going to be putting in, we're going to get the signs printed and put out there.
That's great.
And we have a few little add-ons that we are trying to do. So we'd like to get like some sort of marker as well. And maybe even some rain gauges in the future.
That's great. And you could let or share some of those educational designs and stuff that you want to put out there, so that other communities potentially pursuing the same thing could maybe use. Yeah,
other communities. Even just members of our own community.
Okay.
Just showing people what this instead of what their typical giant kidney bean landscaping feature in their front yard looks like right now. Right. This is what they could look like. Yeah. And rain gardens kind of are considered in many circles kind of as these wild places where mosquitoes breed and all these other things. But our educational signage basically is to show that they aren't where mosquitoes breed. They can look beautiful. They can look wild as well, but they can be very manicured. It all just depends on what you want, and it shows you all of the different functions of what they do, and then both of the super local impacts, so what it would do in your yard, but then also the broader impacts, what it would do in your watershed,
right,
or whatnot.
This has been great, by the way.
Yeah, definitely.
And I have one last question for you. I want you to paint a picture. Okay, so you have the magic wand. You've done the work. You've shown partnering organizations in town how to identify and plant a rain garden, and you've communicated an important message of the importance of that. And so every project that comes through here, we try and measure the impact. Mm-hmm. Okay, we try and understand what the impact is, and we try and set our expectations really high. Whether we meet those expectations or not is yet to be determined. But paint the perfect picture for you and for the community of what the impact of these gardens would be here.
So if the gardens that we've put in, short-term impacts, getting people educated, beautifying a space, taking something that was either just a lawn or an old fountain and making it into something different, have a little, I don't know, natural creativity and get people to just stop and pause for a minute, maybe have a picnic nearby. So those are kind of our short-term goals, and maybe manage water a little bit better on that site. More broad-term goals, get people to ideally put in, water management devices or rain gardens on their properties, and be able to have a measurable impact in the future. So like I said earlier, 1 or 2 rain gardens isn't going to do much. But if you could get 50, 100, 2,000, there's some cities that are shooting for 10,000 rain gardens
Wow.
in their city. And, that's where you start to see an impact. That's an actual measurable impact. And ideally, people will start to say, this neighborhood has this many rain gardens. What can we do? And we can start to actually measure that sort of impact in runoff, in pollution, all these other things that rain gardens are doing as well. And they're also, they're fantastic pollinator habitat for bees and butterflies. So there's all these extra things that can go on just beyond like the water management feature. So again, I've said it a few times, but like going back to that functional and beautiful space that you can have. So having multiple rain gardens in multiple communities within the city of Lafayette, but then ideally taking these sort of features and kind of letting each community do something that would benefit them with these sort of functional, beneficial landscapes.
Really quickly, any resources that you can share that could help someone who maybe doesn't necessarily have the subject matter expertise? Sure. That you could point them to?
Yeah. So locally, Lafayette Consolidated Government has a really great PDF on their webpage that just shows you how to do all sorts of community projects, not just rain gardens. They'll show you how to install a rain barrel. They'll show you how to organize a litter pickup, all sorts of different things. So that's on their website. I believe it's also Lafayette Consolidated Government's DEQ has a nice document out there about rain gardens specifically, again, as well as a few other water management features. More broadly, the Acadiana Native Plants Association, they're working to try to get more native plants into the hands of homeowners. And then I think also, there's more broadly, just Googling rain gardens, there's fantastic YouTube videos from, both professionally made documentaries or just, Joe down the road who has set up a time-lapse camera and shows you what to do and walks you through it. So just spending a little bit of time on the internet, educating yourself on things. It's, there's a ton of resources out there. I think that ideally we could try to maybe even get them consolidated a little bit more in one place. But to the person that's interested in rain gardens, it certainly is not hard to find information. And then also here in Louisiana, you can actually, if you want to send in your soil in your yard, I think the Ag Center has some resources on what type of soil you have, which is important for rain gardens. And then they also have information and resources as well on a few other things for rain gardens.
That's great. Dr. Eric Yondo, thank you so much. Your project has been an example to other citizens to act to create change in their community. And so we thank you. We thank all your teammates for that example.
Thank you, Bush.
All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. That's our first Deer Community Live. We're gonna post this video on our webpage. We're gonna post this video on our social media outlets. And again, our goal is to share the experiences of all of our projects so that can be replicated in the work at Live On. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.